Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 111. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, the quarterback dominoes continue to fall, although they fall around the Pittsburgh Steelers as Russell Wilson has made his decision. He is now a New York Giant. The Aaron Rodgers wait continues as we wonder why the Aaron Rodgers wait continues. Dave, we got a new signing, new waiver claim, pro days, comp picks, a ton going on. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, happy Wednesday to you. And to pull a line out of the old Seinfeld, it moved. Did you ever see that episode?
I have.
Yeah, and it moved, meaning I guess the quarterback log jam to some degree. It moved finally. So I got to be honest, I was rooting for Russell Wilson to land in Cleveland, but not after the draft. Like we kind of brought up the scenario. If he went that way, would he wait until after the draft to kind of impact the compensatory value? This ended up probably being the best case scenario for the Steelers. Outside of it being a higher base value contract wise when it comes to compensatory, and him being out of division, out of conference, and everything that goes along with that, outside of the slim possibility of Russell Wilson, I guess, returning, which didn't seem like was going to be in the cards for quite a while now. So I would take this probably as, of all things that have happened, if you want to play glass half full instead of glass half empty here, this is probably the best case scenario for the Steelers when it comes to Russell Wilson. And we'll talk a little bit more about what this means to the compensatory value process, and what it might, the top side of that and all. But the fact of the matter is that he is going to be a New York Giant now. The fact is that all three quarterbacks from last season are now officially gone. So the Steelers will turn over their quarterback room for a second consecutive season, which is kind of unprecedented, I guess, overall. When you talk about not only the Steelers but the NFL in totality. And now, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has got nowhere else to go, I guess, theoretically. So it's either probably going to be retirement or the Steelers for him. And we just wait for the official word when and if that happens.
To stick with the Seinfeld quotes, it may not be spectacular, but it is real that Russell Wilson is a New York Giant. 1 year, $10.5 million guaranteed. Incentives can push the deal up to $21 million. And so essentially half that contract can be incentive laden. What that means for Pittsburgh and the comp formula, we'll talk about here in just a couple of moments. But you're right, Dave, that domino fell. Obviously, this is, I think, a tacit admission from the Giants that they were not going to get Aaron Rodgers, that Rodgers is destined to either play for Pittsburgh or do something else, playing for the Steelers, the most likely outcome here. And so they said, let's not wait. Let's get Russell signed, make sure Cleveland can't jump in, make sure something else can't occur where other options become on the board for Russell Wilson. So as your read on this, the Giants essentially admitting we are going to be out on Rodgers either officially or unofficially. He's going somewhere else. And so let's just sign Russell Wilson right now.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if Aaron let him know that what direction or didn't, but maybe they're reading the writing on the wall and probably got a good idea that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to come to the Giants. So they went the other direction, and on the heels of signing Jameis Winston. And look, what this does to them, you have a little bit lower guarantee with Russell Wilson brings you another veteran on board. You pump up a lot of incentives in there. It'll be interesting to read those when they hit and all. And then it still doesn't prevent the Giants from maybe taking Shadur Sanders or whoever else in the draft and really loading up the quarterback room that way. I'll tell you what, if they end up landing Shadur Sanders in the draft and all, that's a media bonanza, I guess, there in New York, because you get Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Shadur Sanders, who are all probably quality sound bites in their own different ways and some similar ways there. But the fact of the matter is for whatever reason they decided they are out on Aaron Rodgers and decided to go the way with Russ, and a little bit surprising at the low end of the contract for Russell Wilson, but it obviously makes sense from the Giants' perspective. And Russell Wilson was like Aaron Rodgers, running out of potential landing spots. So uh, there you have it. That's the way it is, and now we just wait to see where, if indeed Aaron Rodgers lands with the Steelers, something we've obviously been talking about for quite a while now.
And while I'm sure many Steeler fans are happy to see Russell Wilson officially exit, Steeler fans should be rooting for him to have a fantastic season with the Giants, because that'll directly play into his ability to reach his incentives, which we do not currently know that incentive structure. Are they likely to be earned, not likely to be earned? We don't know details and reporting on that yet. But if he can reach all of those incentives, according to Over the Cap's Nick Corte, who is the forefront expert on all things comp formula related, Pittsburgh could conceivably receive a third round compensatory selection in 2026 for next year's draft. As of right now, Corte is putting it as a base fifth round selection up to a third. And so Pittsburgh really should be hoping that Russ has a fantastic season with his new team.
And Justin Fields as well, right? And really, all of them. You look. You don't begrudge people for leaving for whatever reason. All what did Nick Corte write as the best case scenario if Russ hits all of his incentives and Fields, uh, I guess has a good season? Did he say potentially for the overall value could increase to potentially 4 third rounders?
Well, that would include Pittsburgh's original third round pick.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
So
okay.
so Fields currently is slotted as a high fourth round selection. It is kind of funny because Fields' average yearly value is 20 million. Dan Moore's average yearly value is 21 million, and Russell Wilson can be up to 21 million as well. And that seems to be right at the cutoff between third and fourth round. But in theory, because again, comp picks are based off of two things: contract and playing time. So if Fields plays enough, maybe other guys around him don't play quite as many snaps, and obviously the money is the money. It is still possible, according to Corte, for Fields to net a third rounder. So if he does, and if Wilson maxes out his incentives, and Dan Moore does his thing at left tackle, it is a scenario in which it is possible that Pittsburgh has 3 third round compensatory selections plus their original 2026 third rounder, giving them 4 per Cortez. Never heard of a team getting 3 third round comp picks in 1 year, but Pittsburgh has an opportunity to make that happen.
All right. Look, Russell Wilson had to play his ass off, especially if this team drafts a quarterback, like Shadur Sanders. And I think their win total still is like 3 or 3.5, even after,
It was low for the Giants.
yeah, even after signing Russell Wilson there. So expectations aren't high. If Russell, if the Giants are struggling, they got a rookie quarterback in the fold, and they get later in the season, and they were looking to potentially save some money when it comes to incentives on Russell. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out that the likelihood of Russell Wilson meeting the high end of this contract's not great, but that's why you put incentives in there, right? To see if he could reach them at all. But at the worst here, you're coming out of this now, and barring the Steelers making any significant move on their side of the ledger to counteract any of these compensatory values that are on the board, they're They're going to come out of this with 4 compensatory picks, which is the max they can have for 2026. So now, we just wait to see what the overall round value is on those, and regardless of what those 4, assuming the number remains at 4 is, you can't help but think about maybe what this potentially does to the 2026 draft, which, by the way, is in Pittsburgh. And if this team is still in need of a franchise quarterback and likes the potentially 1 or 2 of them in the draft class, and they're not picking top 5 or what have you for whatever reason, it makes your mind race to think about what potentially they could package to, who knows, maybe move up to draft a quarterback in the 2026 draft in the first round.
Sure, that seems very possible, even though we're almost 13 months out from that happening, and it's hard to predict. It's impossible to predict what pick they'll have, what quarterbacks will be there, but the consensus is the 2026 quarterback class will be stronger than the 2025 class. I know, Dave, we're both on record and maybe a little, not hot takey, but going the other way against the grain from fan opinion, that Pittsburgh this plan that we're mapping out about use the comp picks and just have that draft capital to trade up for a quarterback next year may not be an intentional plan. I don't think Pittsburgh is making all their moves just based off the comp formula and what they can and can't get, but it is certainly a byproduct of their actions, and it does make more sense. And we've both been on record saying that this is not the year to make that aggressive play for the quarterback, that next year is the better timing to do it, and they'll certainly have more ammunition to do it. Now, this is not to say that third round picks alone can get you up to a high draft pick, but potentially, you don't have to go to number 1 to get somebody. Josh Allen was drafted 7th overall, Mahomes was drafted 10th overall, and those teams, Buffalo and Kansas City, traded up to get those players. So if you can use those third round picks as part of a deal, or if you trade other selections, firsts and seconds, then you still have top 100 picks and third round selections to still build out your roster and land that hopeful next franchise quarterback. And so it just gives you flexibility, gives you options. It does not clear out your cupboards to make a deal like this potentially. So we're just kind of mapping out what could happen. And certainly that is a plausible scenario.
Yeah, I would agree there. Look, I mean, you don't go into last season thinking, okay, we can get Justin Fields, trade for him for this, and then get Russell Wilson on a cheap contract, and we're automatically planning to turn around and then let those guys walk off and get the compensatory high, potentially high compensatory values, or at least get them on the board. You don't go in with that, but it is, being how things worked out, neither one of those guys going, obviously going to be your franchise quarterback. The byproduct of it to get on the board, not only with those 2, but Dan Moore, and who was the other one that's on the board for them? I guess it would be Najee, right? Would be the other one there. Yeah. Look, it doesn't hurt to work around it. And look, I think moving forward at this point now, knowing that they have 4 on the board, I mean, and plus with the free agency, available free agents winding down and looking like the Steelers have most of their work done, I really doubt that you're going to see someone get signed by the Steelers that's going to end up canceling any of those 4 players out at this point.
Right. Is it James Daniels as the other comp pick?
Was it James Daniels?
I think
Maybe
it's
it
James
was.
Daniels that's netting
All
that
right.
that additional compensatory selection, but we'll have to double check things.
That's right. Najee's ended up being low enough. It ended up potentially getting it's canceled out on the board right now. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it is James Daniels.
But either way, you get the idea on the comp picks. They're going to have a lot of them potentially high selections. So yeah, I mean, I think Pittsburgh did some things that would run counter to the idea. They intentionally are playing this long game for the comp picks. They attempted to re-sign Justin Fields, so if they accomplished that, they weren't going to get a comp pick. They made a play reportedly for Sam Darnold. If they signed him, that would have taken away, canceled out a high level contract. Obviously, you can't predict that you can trade for a DK Metcalf. It came together, but if that didn't happen, they were going to have to add a receiver and probably go sign somebody in for agency. That would have affected the comp formula. They were in on reportedly Javon Kinlaw, money too much, and so that would have impacted the comp formula. Aaron Rodgers just kind of falls into their lap there, and they still can't guarantee that he's going to pick them, even though that seems to be where this thing is headed. So again, I don't think it was the actual plan of like, let's get all the comp picks we can. But you do recognize that's the position that they are in. They did know they were going to lose a bunch of free agents, and they weren't going to bring back guys like James Daniels and Dan Moore and Najee Harris, etc. And so it becomes reality, even if it was not the official intent of the team.
Yep.
Dave,
Agreed.
let's talk about Russell Wilson as one season in Pittsburgh. How do you review it? How do you think about it? And why ultimately do you believe Russell Wilson did not return?
Well, let's roll back all the way back to at least January, end of January, when Art Rooney made his end of the season rounds and was talking about both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And he said, I think they're both capable quarterbacks, and my preference would be to sign one of them. So that will be the priority. And I think that gives us the best opportunity to move forward. Then I'm going to insert a fart sound there.
That's
Uh,
pretty good fart sound.
Hey, there you go. A lot of years of being a brat and making fart sound as a kid. All right. Do you before I answer you, before we get into how will the Russell Wilson era in Pittsburgh be remembered? Uh, do you believe at the time, at the end of January, that this was indeed Art Rooney II's intention and what he hoped and planned and wanted to happen was one of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields returning, re-signing one of them?
Man, that's a really good question, Dave. The more that, with the benefit of hindsight, my belief is the team really only ever truly wanted Justin Fields back. Maybe there was still some scenario back in January in which Russell Wilson could return, not knowing exactly how the quarterback landscape that they probably knew wasn't going to be bountiful with a ton of options out there, where that was possible for Wilson to return. But I think the majority of the commentary about expressing a desire to bring Russell Wilson back was more lip service and good PR from a leverage standpoint, to not say we only want Justin Fields back, which gives them, his agency, more leverage to drive up his price tag, and also to avoid the headline and the questions of, well, why do you not want Russell Wilson back? Why do you prefer Fields? Why did you bench Fields for Wilson and then not want Wilson back and want Fields back? And so I think it was more of the PR spin than reality to bring Russell Wilson back, or a desire to bring Russell Wilson back.
Because, and I've got air quotes up here, usually what Art Rooney says towards the end of the, in his wrap up media sessions, usually are things that he really wants to see come to fruition. So in this case, could it have been PR? Could it have been negotiation, leverage, all like that? Sure, I think so. I really do. Now, here's the other, and you wrote about this this morning and all like that. I wonder how much maybe some of the quotes that Russell Wilson had about control of the offense and direction of the offense, and just some of the things that maybe he has said since the end of January, maybe soured the team a little bit on here, or a lot of bit, since Art Rooney made those comments. I mean, we'll never get all the answers, to these questions here, but just covering this process as long as I have, and I know as long as you have, usually when Art Rooney says things like that at the end of the year, and look, it very well could have been, I'm going to throw both quarterbacks' names out here, but at its core, I really want, we would really want Justin Fields back. And had they been able to sign Justin Fields, I believe that they made an earnest offer to keep Justin Fields, and it didn't work out that way. Mm-hmm. And if you were to rank them at the way they potentially wanted him back, it would have been Justin Fields and then Russell Wilson up, for obvious reasons there. Long story short, they got none of them. But it is curious to kind of rewind back to the end of January and use the actual words of what Art Rooney II said, and then kind of wonder maybe if some of the things that Russell Wilson has said in a few interviews since then, and the whole look, five game losing streaks don't sit good, and Mike Tomlin saying to in so many words that we can't go through that again, and it does make you wonder of how serious maybe they were of having Russell Wilson on that list of the two quarterbacks that they would my preference would be to sign one of them.
Sure. Maybe I should modify my comment to say I think when Rooney made those comments at the time, right after the season, the door was closing on Russell Wilson. That Fields was clearly the guy that they wanted back more than Russell Wilson. But then some of the things that transpired throughout the offseason, primarily that Jerry Dulac article that really threw Arthur Smith, the offensive coaching staff, under the bus and accusing him and the coaching staff of handcuffing Russell Wilson, that closed the door, I think, on Russell Wilson's potential return. So when they did lose out on Justin Fields, they had no appetite to pivot back towards Russell Wilson, and it's leading them to Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm not saying that report is accurate or not, but my point is, if you have a report that comes out that throws your coaching staff under the bus, it's not going to sit well with Arthur Smith.
Right.
And I think that relationship just got so toxic, so fractured that Mike Tomlin looked at it and said, "We just can't try to make this thing work for another season. It's just not gonna go well. There's too much tension there, professionals as Russ and Smith may be, and has already been reporting about." And even before that article came out about a fractured or rift between Smith and Wilson, even Jordan Schultz hinting that Tomlin's relationship with Russell Wilson is not as good as it was a year ago. What exactly does that mean? We don't know, but that is the reporting out there. So heck, even Pablo Labriola apparently made a comment about it in his column yesterday. It ended up, I think, deleting it. I never personally got to see it in the article, but that is the prevailing wisdom. So I think the combination of obviously you lose 5 straight games, your offense tanks, your team collapses. Wilson does not take all the blame for that, but he certainly did not play well over that span. Combined with whatever rift there was with the coaching staff, meant that he was not going to return.
Why do you reckon that was deleted?
That's a
That
good
had to come.
question.
That had to come
Some higher up.
from
Some
Rooney or Tomlin or something.
Somebody got in the ear of that. Someone read that article in a prominent Steelers position and wasn't happy with that for sure.
It
And just to be clear, the
go
commentary, because it was only for a short time, it was the commentary was essentially Labriola's opinion that because he was asked about why is Russ not returning, and Labriola said basically my belief is the relationship is just too fractured for Russell Wilson to return.
is Russell Wilson. Are there two faces of Russell Wilson? Or is look, we all, and I'm not slapping Russell Wilson. Look, Russell Wilson did a lot of good. I mean, to see all those every Tuesday or whatnot at the Children's Hospital, and that alone, to keep that kind of schedule, to do that, and do those visible things. But it is I'm not saying that's contrived as a PR machine and all like that, because it takes time out of a schedule, and he looks sincere and all doing that. It does make you wonder, though, is there two sides to Russell Wilson? Is there the media side, rah rah, everything's great, everyone on the team is great, and then a different side of Russell Wilson behind the facility doors?
Yeah, I want to be careful speculating about that. And it's maybe not even just Russ himself. He's got a big entourage and a big circle around him and
Well, you
with
remember
net
all the stuff
influences.
Mark Sheriff, Sheriff, and some of the kind of tone that Sean Payton has had, and these guys are not coming out and saying that Russell Wilson's a bad person, but they're almost like saying, "Yeah, glad you're not in our building anymore."
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that has certainly followed him. And so I get the point of that. It's just, it's harder for me to comment on that, not maybe exactly knowing all the things that they know. But all I can do, Dave, is just look at what happened and the reporting that came out of Pittsburgh, which was there was some degree of rift. It wasn't a great relationship. How bad it was exactly, I can't tell you, but I think it certainly got worse when articles like that one from Jerry Dulac came out that pointed the finger essentially at the coaching staff. And you couple that with the hard sell of trying to bring a guy back for after a 5-game losing streak leads his team to go elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. All right, now back to, I guess, your original question, I guess, is how, in so many words, is how will Russell Wilson be remembered? Is that what you want to
Yeah, I mean,
rephrase that?
yeah, I guess partially just what is kind of your inventory of Russell Wilson's 2024 in Pittsburgh, and how will he be remembered?
I think it was, I think his play on the field was kind of as advertised. What were the things that we wrote about, or that I highlighted and we talked about when Russell Wilson was signed? The guy can still throw the deep ball down the side of the field. Before he joined the Steelers, he had one of the higher, I think, completion rates of balls. I forget what the distance was. I know 20 or more, but it might have been 40 or more as well too. That was one of the highlights to him, is completing the football down the field outside the numbers. And he did that. He did that in Pittsburgh. Uh, the other aspect was he he took a lot of sacks. We knew that him and Justin Fields were likely, what was it? Both of them had average, what was the total between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson from the previous season was 100 sacks, I think.
Mhm.
Average of 50 each. I think one was maybe 51. I don't remember, but it was right around that 50 number. And they both took, a high amount of sacks, I think, overall. Think we kind of knew about he's either going to be home run ball or check down Wilson, and that ended up being coming to fruition. Look, they put a few more points on the board than they had in previous seasons. But when push came to shove against the tougher competition later on in the season, when you got past the games that you quote unquote, because what were we saying going into last season after the schedule was set? They got to make their hay in the first half to 2/3 of the season, and then put themselves in a position to win a couple of those tougher games later in the season against AFC North and Eagles and Chiefs and who was the other team in there?
The Ravens? Did you
Yeah, I
mention
guess it would
Baltimore?
have been the
Ravens,
Ravens.
Eagles, Chiefs,
Yeah.
Bengals?
Uh, how would they do against the tougher teams, quote unquote, or tougher part of the schedule later on in the season? And you know, Russell Wilson did not play well enough at all. They did not put up points on the board. They were turning the football over. You can't help but go back and think about that crucial fumble with Russell Wilson, taking off with the football against the Ravens and uh, he'll mostly. Unfortunately for him, I think he'll be remembered for two things: the moon ball and the 5-game losing streak at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think what he'll be remembered for is the losing streak, and then also that decision, even though it's not directly Wilson making this decision, obviously, but replacing Justin Fields midseason. And the question will be, what could have been had Fields been given the keys for the entire season? Would the season have played out the same way? I don't think Pittsburgh would have gone on a Super Bowl run, but would they have avoided a 5-game losing streak? Who knows? Would Fields have wanted to come back? Had he felt like he had the confidence from the coaching staff that they stuck with him the whole way? Again, who knows? But I think that'll be remembered pretty well about just that whole decision from Tomlin to pivot from Fields, who was 4-2. Again, Fields wasn't playing amazing. I mean, I thought that Raiders game, that final start he had, even though Pittsburgh won in comfortable fashion, Fields had his worst game of the season in that performance, and I came darn near close to getting benched mid-game. Remember that interception he threw that got negated by penalty? And if that would have stood, I think Tomlin possibly makes a switch at halftime to Russ. But point is that change was made. It was controversial. And so I think that's going to get remembered pretty well, along with that terrible end to the season.
Yeah, most definitely. All right,
And
and
personally, I'll just remember the whole craziness of why are quarterbacks pushing sleds in training camp, and can we never ever do that again with any quarterback, please?
right, and yeah, would he have? I mean, he would have indeed been the starter out of the chute, right?
Yes.
All right. Pole position, all, all of that stuff, and all. I mean, would we have even seen Justin Fields play 100 snaps last year? You know.
Sure. One of those big what ifs. If he doesn't have to push a sled, he's healthy, he's the week one starter. One of those unanswered questions from the season.
All right. He's gone. I'd imagine Russell Wilson and Justin Fields Steelers jerseys are mighty cheap at this point. And now we move on. But I do kind of wonder about the Art Rooney. Look, I would have bet you a lot of money that one of those two would have re-signed this offseason, going into the offseason, especially after Art Rooney made the comments that he made. I would have bet you a lot of money at least one of those guys would have been back.
Sure, that was my expectation too. I think that was expectation across the league. And so it is fair to talk about those Rooney comments and the team's public posture if we want to bring one of these guys back. And I made the point before. I'll make it again. I'm sure I'll make it after there is some finality about Aaron Rodgers' decision. This is an organization in Pittsburgh that is grab bagging quarterbacks. Let's try this guy. Okay, let's try this guy. And they're a rudderless ship. That was a great phrase a listener emailed in a couple shows ago, where they don't really have a good coherent plan of what they want to do with quarterback, which is why I've always talked about having to make that move for a first round quarterback in all likelihood next season, because right now they're just trying to throw a bunch of mud at the wall, hoping something sticks, and nothing has.
Yeah, they're having to go the veteran route. And how many times do we see this around the league with other teams? And fortunately for the Steelers, they went for damn near 20 years with Roethlisberger, and you take for granted sometimes, and all when you do have that, just think that's the way it is. And when you get in a situation like this team has been since Roethlisberger retired, this is what happens when you don't have that franchise quarterback, and this is what happens when a couple other teams in your division do have their franchise quarterback, and this is what happens when you miss on a first round quarterback that you take a shot on. And this is what happens when you're not able to develop maybe a mid-round guy, uh, per se, Mason Rudolph on your roster as well too. But it's the Steelers aren't the only team that has gone through this in the past, and it's there is no exact science to quarterback drafting. I mean, my wife was asking me about this the other day, saying, not every team's going to be able to grab a Tom Brady in the sixth round and have what happened there. And then I said, well, look at Brock Purdy. Now Brock Purdy has not won anything in the NFL, but Brock Purdy has put himself in a great position. I mean, he's been in a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So or at least he played in that one, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was the
Yeah,
overtime
yeah,
loss of the
yeah,
Chiefs. Yep,
yeah.
yep.
I mean, we're talking about Mr. Irrelevant there. So it's not an exact science, but until you find a franchise quarterback, you're either going to you're going to go the old veteran route to try to get a season or two out of them, or you're going to take a couple of washouts, i.e., Justin Field, high pedigree guys to see if you can salvage them. And if that you end up in a constant state of quarterback purgatory, and that's where this team is right now. And let's assume Aaron Rodgers does indeed sign with the Steelers. How many years are you going to get out of that? Probably only one.
And doing it all again in 2026. Same conversations, different year. I was a little slow in answering the Purdy question because I was reading this tweet that just came through from Jerry Dulac that says, quote, Russell Wilson wanted to remain with the Steelers right up till the end before he agreed to a deal with the Giants per sources, end quote. And so Wilson publicly, throughout the early parts of the offseason at the Pro Bowl, maybe even during Super Bowl week, talked about wanting to remain a Steeler, even basically still referencing himself as a Steeler, and wearing Steelers apparel out practicing. But in the end, I guess he even saw the writing that Wilson may have wanted to return to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh did not want Wilson to return.
Now, in his introductory press conference, whenever that happens, which I imagine will happen pretty quick here in New York, one of the questions, if the New York beat writers are doing their homework, will be trying to focus in maybe on some of maybe the issues he had with Arthur Smith and control of the offense and uh, a mix of ideas of how the offense should be run. But Russell Wilson's done this enough that he'll probably sidestep it pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not going to give you a whole lot in that presser. It's going to be a lot of, I enjoyed my time in Pittsburgh.
I
I'm
wanted to
super
go back.
excited for, right. I don't think he'll even say that because that leads a whole lot of the questions of, do you even want to be here in New York? It's going to be, I enjoy my time in Pittsburgh. I appreciate them, but I'm really excited for this new journey in New York. I love Malik Neighbors. I love Darius Slayton. Here's a depth chart of the receivers. I'm going to read them off for you guys. That's going to be the tone of the press conference. And so we'll write about it, of course. We'll talk about it, but I don't expect there to be big headline news from Russ. It's going to be standard, as you like to call him, Mr. Mayor, now in New York/New Jersey.
All right.
Dave, you made the comment a moment ago about when you go post-franchise quarterback, as Pittsburgh has, it does get messy. But isn't this extreme even for teams in that circumstance? They're now slated to have a different week one quarterback in 5 straight years. I'm going to have to try to, and I don't know how I'm going to do this efficiently, figure out, when was the last team that started 5 different week one quarterbacks in 5 straight years? Isn't this even extreme for teams in purgatory like Pittsburgh?
I don't know. Is Cleveland? Cleveland's got
Okay, maybe Cleveland. It's a good place to start.
I would start my research there potentially.
Fair,
But
not good if you're
yeah,
in the same boat as Cleveland. That's a bad sign.
just how many times have you? And look, not every team around the NFL carries a 3 quarterback room, especially for an entire season. I think more and more teams are doing it now, but I mean, when is the last time you've seen a complete? I mean, I in Pittsburgh alone, but I mean, around the league, have you seen a complete 3-man quarterback room totally, an upheaval of it, back to back years?
Sure. In Pittsburgh, at least, it's going to be pre-2004, considering Ben was there for the entire run that he was in Pittsburgh. So even in Steelers circles, the last time that happened may have been decades ago.
This will continue. And look, you can you quantify this as being a, excuse my French, shit show quarterback, carousel, how the Steelers have handled it until you know the outcome of what happens this year? Or is it fair to qualify it that now? Or do you at least give them props for not standing in the pile of crap for back-to-back years?
There's something to be said about teams who can admit mistakes sooner than later. I get the value in that, but this is not just a 1-year thing. This is an every year thing of changing quarterbacks and let's go try to get this guy and maybe this guy will work. And they've tried every avenue of sign and trade and draft and nothing has seemed to work. So there is value in if you admit that mistake early, but then the other side of that has to be, okay, you have to solve the problem. And Pittsburgh they're good at admitting mistakes. They're not good at solving the problem. And that latter part is all that really matters.
What has this team's record been combined in the regular season since Ben Roethlisberger retired?
Do not know off the top of my head. It is above 500.
They were 10-7 last year.
Hold on, let me
They were
write all this down.
10-7 in 2023, right? So that's 20-14. 2022 they were 9-8.
Those are the 3 years,
Yeah.
right? So they are 29-14-8, 22, 29
Right.
and 22.
All right. What's the win percentage on that?
Too much math here on a
Yeah.
Wednesday, Dave. Let me pull it up. Now, of course, the stat people will look at is 0 playoff
Sure.
wins,
Sure.
but I understand where you're going. It is a .569 winning percentage.
All right. Is that good based on all the different quarterbacks that have flown, through there?
It may be good in that vacuum, but for Pittsburgh, their expectations, as we've talked about, is to do more than just have winning regular
I'm not
season.
defending it. It's just an
Sure, sure.
open-ended. It's an open-ended question.
For a team that has had so much upheaval at quarterback and often, frankly, really bad quarterback play, it is good, yes.
Okay.
But obviously, the defense has had a big part in why this team has won over that span. And I'm not, just to be clear, I know you're not making this point, but we don't want to get more angry emails. That does not excuse this team not winning in the playoffs. And that's what they have to do. And they have not been able to do. And no one really cares if you go 10-7 and get rolled in the wild card game as Pittsburgh has for several seasons now.
And then also to clarify that losing streak to end the season last year, that's not all Russell Wilson.
Sure. I think you could make the case he was not even a core problem of the losing streak. Certainly didn't help, but I think the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, were the biggest issues and reasons why this team completely collapsed.
All right. Okay. Anything else to wrap up from that while we wait on what's next?
Well, let's just talk about briefly again what's next. Waiting on Aaron Rodgers, the Giants no longer an option, Minnesota seemingly no longer an option. We're still waiting. Now, that news could come in 10 seconds after the podcast, more likely Thursday when you're out of your house, Dave.
Mhm.
So we'll see. But it seems like the options for Rodgers, I guess there are three: retire, Pittsburgh, or wait. And waiting would be for either Minnesota or something else to open up. Retirement is retirement. And then, of course, going to Pittsburgh is the contract on the table right now. So it still seems like more likely than ever, Rodgers will go to Pittsburgh, but nothing's done until it's done. And we've not really heard much about Rodgers since Russ signed with the Giants.
And might he wait until after the draft is another question everybody continues to ask. Might he see what the direction maybe some of these teams go?
Possible. I I don't know what he'd be waiting for exactly, but possible.
So we sit and wait. Nobody knows when right now.
Right. Tom Pelissero hinted it could be coming soon, but they've been saying that since literally the Tuesday before the new league year began, and here we are.
All right, here's what we do know. This team will have a different starting quarterback week 1.
Right. Now technically Mason Rudolph returns, but we all understand
Yeah,
he's new and he's not new, but he wasn't in Pittsburgh last year.
right, from last year.
One move that was made, Dave, and we should have done the emergency podcast about it, was the Steelers claimed offensive guard Lasita Smith off of waivers from the New England Patriots. So stop the presses there. Now we'll certainly give Lasita Smith his fair shake. Former 6th-round pick, primarily played with the Arizona Cardinals a couple of years back, was with New England last year, with a couple of snaps as a tackle eligible, interior lineman, some guard, potentially even center versatility. And so he'll compete for a roster spot and try to give this team some quality offensive line depth.
I think he passed through Green Bay for a little bit there too, didn't he, on their practice squad or whatnot?
Yeah, I think he was in maybe Philly or Houston. He's bounced around, but his playing time has come with the
Right.
Cardinals and briefly with the Patriots.
You get a guy that you go back to his Virginia Tech days. I think played I think, what did I say, left guard mainly with them in his snaps there, and I think in the NFL so far most of his snaps have been at right guard. Doing some research on him, I think there was some talk at least last year that he might have been an option for them when they had the injuries at center, that he has at least maybe some center capability to him. I don't think he's played any center at either in college or the NFL to date. If he has, it hasn't been much at all. What this is just gives you a draft pedigree guy, meaning he was at least drafted, that can play both guard spots and maybe in emergency some center spot. And it gives you depth and bodies, moving into training camp to compete for a spot there. I think even he played a couple snaps at one of the tackle spots in college or something like that as well too at Virginia Tech, if memory serves me. But you're claiming him off waivers. He's on a minimal contract, so he's going to have to try to earn a roster spot moving forward.
One start at left tackle at Virginia Tech was what I had read in his bio. He played some center in the preseason with New England, I believe, but no regular season experience there. I imagine they'll try him out. So again, just depth. He'll compete with Spencer Anderson, Ryan McCollum, and so it's fine to add. Obviously, no risk there, but you do still look at the lack of offensive tackle depth and wonder when that will be addressed
Agreed.
and how they'll address it and who they'll address it with. We don't exactly know. And so no matter who the quarterback is, be it Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers, neither quarterback super fleet of foot. And so I really talk about Broderick Jones and the spotlight on him in what is a critical year 3 for himself and for this offense to be that blindside protector.
And yeah, aren't we coming up next offseason, the decision on the 5th-year option on Broderick?
Yes, sir.
So big season for him, and they've got to get these. They got to have better. They've got to have great tackle play, a lot better than what we've seen the last couple seasons here. Got to see that this year.
And if you go another season declining a 5th-year option, man, talk about a pattern there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, especially a team that prides itself in building through the draft.
Exactly. All right, Dave, let's talk about NFL. Let's talk about one other
Visit.
visit. Yeah, thank you. I've been trying to read my handwriting about what this M word is. It is Terrace Marshall, veteran receiver, former second-round pick of the Carolina Panthers. He visited the Steelers yesterday, has not signed, reportedly, according to Aaron Wilson, has a visit with the Tennessee Titans today. And so he's a guy that has bounced around, has had a LSU. He was part of that great LSU offense with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow, and became a second-round pick of Carolina. Did not work out there. Has bounced around. Was with the Raiders briefly last year. Caught 3 passes, and so we'll see if he gets signed. Won't talk about it a whole lot until and if that occurs. But Pittsburgh taking a look at Terrace Marshall.
All right, we'll see what if anything comes of that.
All right, Dave, let's talk NFL draft now. Pittsburgh seems to be back on the pro day trail. Mike Tomlin and company reportedly at Ohio State. According to Jerry Dulac, they met with running backs Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson, along with quarterback Will Howard last night. Of course, Pittsburgh and their brass being at Ohio State, no surprise there. It's a usual stop for them, and Ohio State has a ton of great prospects this year. And so we've not officially, as of this recording, seen Tomlin, Kahn, and whoever else may be there in Columbus, but I'm sure we'll get eyes on by the time people listen to this podcast.
Yeah, did you cover who they met with there?
Yeah, it was right. Judkins, Henderson, and Howard. Was there anybody else from
I think that was the 3 that
Okay.
Jerry mentioned, right?
Yeah, it looks like it.
All right. Here's a little bit of news for you on Instagram. Punter Cameron Johnston just posted on Instagram that video of him back punting again.
Hey, that's great. I know he had a video of him running recently, and so off that super devastating knee injury, that freak moment in week 1 last year. So that's great progress for him.
All right, let me give this to the guys in the chat to chew on there.
Yeah. Now, he'll probably go to camp and just let him and Waitman, who's still under contract, sign that 2-year deal, battle things out. So we've had a couple of questions about who the punter will be. I don't think you can really say who the team's punter will be. You got to see how Johnston looks and recovers, and you probably have a true camp battle between Waitman and Johnston.
All right. What else is out there for us to discuss here today? Anybody else come in for a pre-draft visit?
We do have, what was the report that one of the running backs was going to come
Blue?
in? Jaden Blue from Texas was telling the SEC network that the Steelers are one of several teams he'll visit with, and that continues to jive, Dave, with Pittsburgh's desire to find those explosive, more later round, mid-round running backs. Now, Blue will probably be a little bit later than, say, DJ Giddens and Dylan Sampson in terms of where he'll be drafted, but he is one of the fastest players in this year's class. He ran 4.38 at the combine. Said he had a bit of a groin issue that hampered him. Reportedly ran in the mid to low 4.2s at his pro day, and that speed translates on tape. I did the profile on him for the site. He is a true home run hitter, a good receiver. He's played on special teams, on the coverage unit, and so he could really be a four-phase kind of a guy. My comp to him was Justice Hill of the Ravens, a guy that'll be not a every down player, more third down type of a role, but get this guy in space. He's a threat and also a really good receiver out of the backfield.
Ball security issues with him too, right?
Yeah, fumbles are one of the big issues with Jaden Blue has been fumbles. He's had 6 of them in his career. He did not carry the ball a ton, so that fumble ratio is pretty unimpressive. And I think he's even talked about needing to improve technique and improve his ball security. I think with his left hand, he was weaker than when the ball was in his right hand. And so that, a lack of power, and just didn't play a lot, was basically a reserve until 2024 when he was part of the committee down there in Texas and was not this team's lead running back. And so he's never really had a central offensive role.
All right. What else?
Interesting guy though. He skipped his senior season of high school because it wasn't even COVID related. It was just he wanted to preserve his body and train for college. Was a big time recruit. Texas stuck with him. Probably didn't have the exact college career that he envisioned. I think he'll be a day 3 guy where I put a 4th round grade on Blue. Could get drafted, I think, a little bit later than 4th round.
All right. A lot of running backs are looking at.
Yeah. So I still think that 3rd, 4th round range for a running back and somebody with some burst, some big playability is certainly what Pittsburgh is looking for. Other pro day things, we did officially confirm tight ends coach Alfredo Roberts was at Miami, Florida's pro day earlier this week. And now Elijah Arroyo is there, one of the better tight ends in a really good class. I wouldn't freak out too much and assume that Pittsburgh is now considering drafting a tight end early. I know that connection is obvious to make, and we love making those connections, but Roberts is a South Florida native. He went to the U, and so it might have been more about his old stomping grounds more so than heavily scouting Elijah Arroyo.
Maybe he was back home visiting and coincided. Was he there the year before?
That's a good question. I can check here. I don't know if he was. I mean, obviously, I'm sure he did look at Arroyo, who I don't think tested, but went through on-field drills and caught passes from Cam Ward. But I just wouldn't necessarily assume. We're going to need to learn more to believe that Pittsburgh would be seriously considering a tight end early, knowing they have Freiermuth and Darnell Washington and a bunch of other needs.
Exactly.
Let me try to see where Roberts was at last year, if my computer will work. I don't think we even saw him on the pro day trail last year, according to our tracker. So yeah, I wouldn't lose too much sleep if you're worried about this team taking a tight end in the first, 2 days.
Right. All right. What else on this Wednesday morning to discuss?
I think that's basically all that I have. Let me just try to see if I have anything else here. Pat Freiermuth has said he's spoken with Aaron Rodgers, or really he's slid into the DMs of Aaron Rodgers. Says Rodgers has replied, but they've only talked through Instagram direct messages.
And I thought it was interesting. Cameron Hayward was on Good Morning Football this morning, Wednesday morning, and saying that he has not talked to Rodgers personally, and in fact, he kind of got the sense that they were trying to rush everybody out of the building on Friday so they could meet with Rodgers, probably without anybody seeing and all like that. We know that didn't work out too well because Jerry Dulac got the word out there pretty quick on that and all. But Cameron Hayward just making sure had a quasi what he would tell Aaron Rodgers if he had a message for him, and basically that no nonsense, no glam like New York, and here to get that, ready to work and get that seventh Lombardi, and all about winning Super Bowls and yada yada, and that he would, in so many words, welcome Aaron Rodgers. So all the stuff that you would imagine if Cam Hayward was going to go on Good Morning Football to be asked about.
Was there too much made out of Hayward's initial comments of not going on darkness retreats and not really wanting to pitch Aaron Rodgers?
I, I don't think so overall, because why even say something like that? Look, it's his podcast. He's trying to, you give people things to talk about, right?
Sure. I mean, I think it was partially because the original question was a little tongue in cheek about, will you do a darkness retreat? And I think Cam was just kind of jokingly back, but bristled, I'm not doing any of that stuff. And then it got a little maybe away from him there and interpreted as, I'm not recruiting Rodgers. But it is clear he's not really pitching Aaron Rodgers the way that he pitched Russell Wilson and talked to Russell Wilson for like 90 minutes, I think was the
Right.
story. So it's kind of half and half to me, half valid, half a little out of context.
Yeah, I'm nobody should lose any sleep over it. And he obviously probably doesn't like the way maybe it was
Hmm.
portrayed.
Right, right. He either
And I
wanted to
think
make it
that's
like
his
he doesn't
message
want
now.
Rodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not saying I don't. He's not closing the door on bringing Rodgers in and welcoming him. He's just not running the full court press for him. And listen, either way, it's not going to affect Rodgers' decision. What Cam Hayward said on the podcast.
Right, right.
Anything else? Let me just kind of scroll down. DeMarvin Leal says a redemption year is coming. Kind of forget about DeMarvin Leal. You mentioned him on last show, coming off that neck injury. So he's healthy. He says he feels good and ready to get after it in 2025.
Boy, this is a big summer for him too, especially the state of that defensive line room, and especially if this team does not double dip. You know, they need this guy to start living up to that to his round grade and all. They need to be able to get him on the field, and not as a like a quasi outside linebacker or anything like that. So this is we talked Broderick Jones, how this is a big year for him. This is a big year for DeMarvin Leal as well.
Yeah, no question. I mean, we thought last year was do or die, and he did have a good summer and made the team, then had the injury. This year, that path becomes even more challenging.
Yep.
All right, Dave, anything else? Feel free. If not, we can get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, are you sure? Look back through some of our posts. Seems like we might be missing something to talk about. Are we?
You could be right, trying to keep track of everything right
We
now.
we got all the visitors, we got all the signings. Let me just scroll through here real quick, make sure we're not missing
Any
anything.
other big pro day news?
James Daniels have anything interesting to say during his interview with the Dolphins media?
Not so much. Talked about he was thankful in a sense for that Achilles injury to happen early last year to not hopefully impact his timetable for 2025. Did really confirm that Pittsburgh ran an outside zone scheme last year under Arthur Smith. He's a big cat guy. He's got 2 cats, and they helped get him through the rehab.
Recap real quick. Look, you write a lot of great things on the site, and I don't tell you enough how good a job you do. But I really did enjoy the why Russell Wilson uh, signed with why he's out of pit. What was the
Mhm.
title that you used
Why
on
Russell
that?
Wilson did not return.
Right. Briefly recap that and tell people why they should go read that.
Yeah, it's really the 2 reasons we talked about, I think, and this is just my opinion piece, obviously, but that's
Right.
the framing of it, just to be clear. The 5-game losing streak, and I've talked about the stench of that. It's hard to be an organization that talks about change and moving forward and getting out of this rut and bring back the guy that was the face of, right or wrong, the starting quarterback for this 5-game losing streak, even knowing it's not all Russell Wilson's fault. I think issues were greater than him, but it's just hard to really sell that to a fan base that is angsty and frustrated and rightfully so to fuel those things. And to say we're going to bring back this guy that brought us to the worst collapse in potentially Steelers franchise history. And so I think that's one side of it. But I think even bigger than that is some rift, some poor relationship, some fracture between Russell Wilson and the coaching staff, whether that's Arthur Smith, potentially even Mike Tomlin, maybe other members of the coaching staff. And I really do think that Jerry Dulac article that came out that pointed the finger at Arthur Smith that essentially said that Russell Wilson was handcuffed and didn't have control over the offense. Not even focusing on if that's true or not, it doesn't matter in my view. The point is that could not have sat well with Arthur Smith and probably not even Mike Tomlin. And if there was already a rip there to begin with, it only fractures things even more. And if you just sit there and say, do you want to bring back this quarterback that had a 5-game losing streak and is not going to work great with our coaching staff and is throwing them under the bus? And when I say Russ doing that, I mean either him or his camp, probably more his camp being a source for that article. So I think you combine those two things, the on-field struggles, the relationship not being healthy. That's why he's not coming back.
All right, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was well written as well too. So good job
Thank you.
on that.
Appreciate that. Also, one other quick thing. How about your take on Mel Blount's comments? Mel Blount was on Ben Roethlisberger's Football and Podcast episode released yesterday. He was pretty. Yeah, that's okay. There you go. I mean, he was calm, but he was very clear in his criticism. We talked about he sees a lot of needs on this roster, and this defense is good, but not where it needs to be. So that's not just Joe Blow or you or I making our critiques. That is a Hall of Famer, a former Steeler, somebody whose words carry a lot more weight, making some very clear comments about his dissatisfaction with where Pittsburgh is at.
I don't disagree with anything that, at least that I heard that we wrote about that he said. And
Sure.
I wonder how much, look, he's revered when he walks in that building. I know that. I wonder if he's listened to enough, and kudos to him for not saying things that people or the organization maybe would want to hear and fluffing it all up. I mean, it's very direct and to the point that had some words about George Pickens, right?
Yeah, it was a little more. What exactly did he say? It was a little directed at Pickens, a little directed at just kind of culturally where some guys are at today, but talking about that it can be difficult building with guys that can be distractions like George Pickens.
Right. And the fact of the matter on defense is that this defense isn't in as great a shape as many maybe want to portray it right now. We all know about the defensive line. You get past Cameron Hayward and Keanu Benton, what do you really have on that defensive front? Talking about defensive linemen in specifically that you can hang your hat on right now, especially with Art Rooney coming out and saying we need to get better against the run. All right, so there's that. It, you you really expecting a better year out of your inside linebackers to take another move forward this year to help with not only coverage but play against the run. Outside linebackers, I think you're fine as long as those guys stay healthy there. Safety, I mean, all the talk about Minka and not making impactful plays. Now, Deshaun Elliott, I think more than carried his water last year. And then the cornerback situation. We saw Joey Porter make strides in certain areas, and then we saw Joey Porter live up to some of the things with the penalties and things related to that. And yeah, you had a guy like Dante Jackson had the takeaways that he had, but couldn't stay on the field. And overall, his play was subpar, and out the door he went. And now you got a guy, an extreme veteran in Darius Slay coming in as basically a 1-year Band-Aid to get you to whatever that next stage is. Corey Trice, you're still wondering, can that guy stay healthy and be maybe a starter moving forward here? So there are a lot of questions about this defense overall. It's nice when you frame it up as your edge rushers and all like this, but this team still didn't have had a decrease in sacks, obviously, as the season went on. In lieu of that, they did have more takeaways, and obviously you'd like to have more takeaways probably than sacks, but not at the byproduct of the sacks dipping down that they did last year. So, in a nutshell, it's hard. If you haven't heard, the interview on the Ben Roethlisberger podcast, go and listen to it, because it's hard to dispute the criticism that Mel Blount had.
If you had to pick one or two key areas for Pittsburgh to improve defensively to get back to where Mel Blount wants this defense to be, where does it have to occur?
You got to be able to defend those guys like Derrick Henry and the running backs that you know the run game down the stretch was awful. Uh, they have got to get better against the run, and then get themselves in more predictable situations where they can get after the passer, whereas the rush and the coverage can work hand in hand better.
I think you're 100% right, Dave. I think you had to distill it down into two sentences: stop the run, rush the passer. Those things have to be better than they were in 2024. And frankly, we don't even talk about the lack of pass rush enough. And I just say that we, as in Steelers Nation as a whole. We talk about the run defense. We talk about secondary concerns. That pass rush really wilted down the stretch. Now, part of that correlates to a lack of run defense when you can't stop the run. Teams aren't in third and long. It's harder to rush the passer. But even in some of those advantageous pass rush situations, Pittsburgh just did not get home. TJ Watt went quiet. You had no pass rush production outside of Cam Hayward along the defensive line, and that was a big time problem schematically. Did you blitz enough? Did you stunt enough? Did you move TJ Watt around enough? There's certainly some other coaching related things you can talk about as well. But Pittsburgh had 40 sacks last year, and that is a super low number for them. I mean, they had like 5 straight seasons of 50+ sacks, and they weren't even close to that in a 17-game season in 2024. So that lack of pass rush really hindered them down the stretch.
What would have 15 more sacks meant to this team last year?
At least another win or two.
Yeah. All right. Okay. We covered that aspect. Maybe that was the part that I thought maybe we were missing were the Mel Blount comments there. All right. Let's go to the email machine here and close out today's show. Sam Carmen. Happy Monday. This was from Monday. Got in after we did the questions on the show. From across the pond in the UK, as I'm sure many Steeler fans are, I am over the whole quarterback drama and just want to know who the quarterback one will be next year. And the longer it's being dragged out, the more I believe drafting a quarterback is in play. However, he says, I'd be in the camp to draft a high pick quarterback next year. So my question is, would drafting a quarterback this year, either first round or later, deter the team from trading up and drafting one next year? I think, Sam, thanks for the email, Sam. I don't remember you being an email machine before, so if that's the first time, congrats. Here's the big part that he put in parentheses here: either first round or later. I think if you draft a first round quarterback this year, it is kind of hard to imagine this team drafting a quarterback in the first round next year. But if you drafted one, say the third or fourth round this year, I still think there's a very good chance, depending on how that player, does as a rookie, if he plays at all, how you see his progress going. I think there's a strong possibility of this team drafting one in the first round in 2026. So I think you included what I'm honing in on this whole email, Sam, is either first round or later, deterring the team from trading up and drafting one next year. Thoughts, Alex?
I'm with you again, lockstep, Dave. I think if you draft, say, Jackson Dart in the first round this year, somehow you get Shedeur Sanders, it's hard to think you'll draft a quarterback in the first round next year, especially under the assumption that rookie this year, that first rounder, probably wouldn't be playing wire to wire. There have been moments across the NFL in which teams have taken first round quarterbacks in back-to-back years. I think about the Cardinals and Josh Rosen, the Kyler Murray, but I think Rosen played more his rookie year. The coaching staff kind of understood, okay, Rosen is not who we thought he was. We had the number 1 overall pick in the next draft. Let's take the top guy there. But I do think, and I think it's a very plausible scenario in which Pittsburgh takes a Jalen Milroe or Will Howard or whoever you want to put in that third, fourth round quarterback bucket this year and still drafts a quarterback in the first round next year. I think that is entirely possible and frankly probably a decent chance of that occurring.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, what was all that kerfuffle that you had on that brouhaha on Twitter after talking about the comp picks last
about the comp picks? I heard about the Fields Milroe comparison I made where I said they fixed Fields' footwork and people acted like I called him a Hall of Famer or something. They improved Justin Fields' footwork. They made him more accurate passer. Doesn't mean he was a great quarterback, but I thought that was a pretty uncontroversial statement. I was wrong, apparently, on that.
Yeah. What about the comp pick mess?
Oh god, what was it even about? It was just me about saying that they're gonna have firepower to move up for a quarterback next year, which I think honestly most people understood, but there were a couple people trying to push back saying third rounders aren't gonna get them to move up. Well, like I said, that can help facilitate a trade, be part of a trade. And if you're moving from say like, I don't know, 15 to 7 or 8, I mean, if you throw a bunch of third rounders into that could potentially get something done. So yeah, it just you know how it goes on Twitter sometimes.
Absolutely, I do. All right, from Chris Burkett, right, saying chances Aaron Rodgers makes his announcement as the Steelers' new quarterback at the live Pat McAfee show in Pittsburgh. He says, "Dear Terrible Pod, with no decision on where Aaron Rodgers will land, with Pittsburgh being the most likely choice, has me wondering in a couple of weeks from when I'm sending this email, there will be a live edition of the Pat McAfee show in Pittsburgh. And knowing the relationship Rodgers has with Pat and how he likes the attention, do you think there's a good chance Rodgers will make his announcement as the Steelers' new quarterback there?" God, Chris, I understand the question, and until we have an answer and no, I can't say that that's not a possibility. But for my sanity's sake, for Steelers Nation's sake, I hope we don't have to wait another almost 30 days for Aaron Rodgers to go on Pat McAfee and make the decision on his show. But I can't tell you that you're wrong here.
What is the date of that event?
I don't know. I mean, we're less than 30 days from the draft now, right?
Yeah, it's in April. I just didn't know the exact
What would that
date.
be? Like the
April 9th.
20?
No, it's April 9th.
Oh, that's when he's in. Oh, okay. I thought this was going to be closer to the draft.
Yeah, no, the Pat McAfee Pittsburgh event looks like it's April 9th.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're only how many days away? Five,
Like 2 weeks
2 weeks. Yeah. Lord, I hope
away.
it doesn't roll out that long.
I mean, yeah, I have no idea. Now, the McAfee show has said they have no idea about Rodgers' plans, and now if that's true or not, I
I
take them
believe
at their
him.
word, right? But for whatever it's worth, if there was something being planned, they're not certainly hinting that they are in the know about when and where and the details and particulars of Rodgers' decision. Also, I have to assume this event has been mapped out and planned for probably quite some time now on McAfee's end, and so I don't know how well you could try to cobble together this big plan of let's have this Rodgers reveal that's been kind of put into motion for weeks and months in terms of booking the event and having the idea and all the logistics of planning that event. So could that still happen though, just organically because Rodgers is still waiting on making a decision? Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea when Rodgers will decide and how he'll decide and how we'll find out about it. So I'm still under the assumption we'll just be sitting here, Dave, you and I, and our phones will start buzzing like crazy about Rodgers' decision, and that's how we'll find out. But we shall see.
We shall see. Mike Tomlin has officially, him and Omar Khan have officially been cited at the Ohio State Pro Day now.
Okay, so we can at least got that one under the wire before we ended the show. So that's good. No surprise, but ton of great prospects. I mean, literally a dozen Buckeyes will get drafted this year.
All right, let's
But
see.
we haven't talked about Emeka Ibuka lately. Is that kind of a less likely first round thought because D line seems so likely? But that was a name that got a lot of buzz in the early draft process.
It'll be interesting to see if Zani's there today. I would imagine he might be, but don't know for sure. I don't think there's any report of that just yet. But I mean, look, it's going to take a lot to get me off defensive line in the first round. So
True. And any chance on Tyleek Williams as a first rounder? Kind of feels more second rounder, but he's a really good run stuffer with some sub package value.
yeah, is he really first round material though?
Fair, but was Artie Burns,
All right.
was Terrell Edmonds. Just want to mention his name.
All right. Nick Shuley says, remember when Mike Tomlin said we want volunteers, not hostages? He says, I do. So why are they letting Rodgers hold them hostage? He says, what a joke. Why not give Trey Lance a call? He's a young, mobile, cheap, and I'm sure he'd jump at the chance to come in and compete. Worst case scenario, they bottom out, take a quarterback early next year. Let me know your thoughts. I think Trey Lance is on a CFL watch list or something I read this morning, something along those lines there. But I mean, Trey Lance isn't going to move the needle. I mean, if he does come in, it's going to be a veteran a minimal contract and all like that. The Steelers are in no hurry here. Do you take this as them being held hostage?
Hostage is a strong word. They have put themselves in a position where they don't have many options. They missed out on Fields and potentially Darnold. They clearly had no interest in Russ. The draft class isn't strong. They're not in a position to land a Cam Ward anyway. So they've really out leveraged themselves. Is that hostage? I don't know. I don't want to get into semantics too much, but they've kind of backed themselves into a corner. And obviously, when you host Aaron Rodgers on a 6-hour visit on Friday, you're not going to really be pushing hard deadlines for let's have a decision right now. You've committed to this. If it's not Rodgers, you're really in a tough spot, and the team, right or wrong, wants to win now. And Rodgers is the last remaining guy that can offer a theoretical path to do so.
Right. Agreed. All right. One last one here from Chris Lookhart. David Alex, can we please get some live coverage from the draft next year or a live stream? This would be unbelievably cool. Also, I personally hope we get Rodgers because maybe that will keep us from drafting a quarterback this year and maybe we go all in next year. I can tell you right now, Chris, that live coverage of a draft, especially for Alex and myself, is I mean, not we could obviously do it, but there's so much going on. We'll have to see what happens with the staff on. It's just it. I'm just going to be brutally honest. It's not something that I really want to do. Because I'm trying to watch so many things at one time, and I'm easily distracted enough as it is in doing our own podcast and watching Twitter on a daily basis. I don't think it would be as quality of content as many would hope it would be because I just don't. Obviously, Alex and I could talk about it as picks come in and do a good job that way. But I just, be quite honest, I just don't have any interest in doing it.
I have more interest. I'd have some appeal. I think it'd be fun to do. But to your point, Dave, it is the draft is frankly our busiest time of the entire
Yeah.
year, even more so than a regular season game.
I'm worried about the site going down. I'm trying to do so many things at one time, and Alex is trying to direct traffic, and it's chaos.
Mm-hmm. Organized chaos, but chaos all the same. So it's just tough logistically for us to do any sort of live stream or event because we're writing, we're tracking. I mean, it's just you get the press conferences after the first round pick. So never say never. I think it'd be cool to do in some respect, but I don't think we're at a point to be able to logistically do that, and more importantly, do it well for you guys.
Right. And now look, I'm not going to say never. I mean, we'll see the life of Steelers Depot and where things go into the future and all like that. Who knows? At one point, maybe all Alex and I want to do is just do a podcast and not have to worry about the site. And maybe we do cover a draft live at some point, but I can almost guarantee it's not going to be next year.
I assume one day you and I will be sitting on a front porch yelling into tin cans about arm lengths and pro days. That's kind of the vision of where this thing I think is going to end up.
I don't. Yeah, look, us growing old together, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In Steelers world is going to be quite interesting. I have been revigorated thanks to the help of Alex and the staff and all like this. This last year particularly, I still very much. I'm not killing myself. Who knows which way this is going to go? All I will say is, Chris. We appreciate the ask and the question and all, but I just can't foresee this happening next year on a live stream.
Or at least this year. Yeah,
Yeah.
who knows what'll happen for next year, but wouldn't count on it for this April's draft.
All right. I think we got through everything we need to get through. Almost an hour and a half here. You and I will be back on Friday. And maybe we'll have some Aaron Rodgers news by then. Maybe we won't. Obviously, if Rodgers signs before Friday, we'll put something together, I would imagine, on an emergency podcast or something like that. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. We have an app, iOS app at the Apple App Store if you want to download and play around with that. And until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.